The iPhone 18 might not be the radical redesign people were hoping for, but there's one small change that could make a surprisingly big difference. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing you more tech breakdowns like this one. After months of confusing leaks going back and forth, a new report suggests that Apple is finally shrinking the dynamic island. Not removing it, not completely reinventing it, just making it noticeably smaller. And honestly, that might be exactly what most people wanted all along. Here's why this actually matters. When Apple introduced the dynamic island back in 2022, it was a clever way to turn a hardware limitation into something functional. Notifications, music controls, timers, it all felt interactive instead of intrusive. But let's be real, it still takes up space on your screen, and after a few generations of the exact same look, it started to feel static. That's why even a small reduction could have a big impact. A smaller dynamic island means more usable screen, less visual distraction, and a cleaner overall look, without forcing Apple to completely redesign the front of the phone. According to a leak from a fairly reliable source, the entire iPhone 18 lineup could get this smaller cutout. And based on the leaked image comparison, it's not just a tiny tweak, it's noticeably more compact. Interestingly, the bezels around the screen are expected to stay the same, but that's not really a problem. Modern iPhones already have extremely thin borders, so shaving off another millimeter wouldn't change much in daily use. The dynamic island, on the other hand, is something you see and interact with constantly, so reducing its size actually improves the experience in a more meaningful way. What makes this situation more interesting is how messy the leaks have been leading up to this. At one point, rumors suggested Apple would ditch the dynamic island entirely and switch to a punch-hole camera. Even more ambitious reports claimed Face ID components would move under the display, leaving just a tiny cutout, or maybe none at all. Then, those expectations got scaled back. The next wave of leaks suggested a compromise. Apple would move some Face ID components under the screen, like the dot illuminator, while keeping others visible. That would allow the dynamic island to shrink, but not disappear. And then, just when things were starting to make sense, another report came in saying nothing would change at all, that the iPhone 18 would look exactly like the iPhone 17 from the front. So yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. That's why this latest leak feels like a middle ground. It's not revolutionary, but it's not disappointing either. It's reasonable. A smaller dynamic island isn't flashy, but it's practical, and it shows Apple is still refining the design instead of leaving it untouched. And to be fair, the front design isn't the only thing to look forward to. The iPhone 18 Pro models are expected to bring a lot of upgrades under the hood. We're talking about a new 2nm chipset, which should deliver better performance and efficiency. That could translate to faster apps, smoother multitasking, and improved battery life, all things users actually notice day to day. There are also rumors of camera improvements and a greater shift towards Apple's in-house components, which usually means tighter optimization between hardware and software. So even if the design changes feel subtle, the overall package could still be a solid upgrade. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that Apple might split the release cycle again. The Pro models could arrive first, with the standard versions coming later. That means if this smaller dynamic island is tied to newer hardware, not everyone might get it right away. Now here's the bigger picture. Apple rarely makes drastic design changes all at once. Instead, it tends to evolve things gradually. And this feels like one of those steps. Shrinking the dynamic island now, possibly moving more components under the display later, and eventually maybe getting to a true all-screen design. So while this update might seem minor on paper, it's part of a larger transition. And honestly, that's probably the smarter approach. Because instead of risking a big experimental redesign that could backfire, Apple is slowly refining what already works. At the end of the day, the iPhone 18 might not look dramatically different at first glance, But if this leak turns out to be true, the smaller dynamic island could quietly improve the experience in a way you notice every single day. Not groundbreaking, but definitely meaningful. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.